Wall Street veteran Bernard Madoff has been arrested and charged with running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme.
Congress wants to know what caused the Enron meltdown.
Now, while the collective rage currently is focused on WorldCom,
Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski was convicted of looting hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is one of the biggest fraud cases ever.
Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Find out more on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
Siemens is a German company founded over 150 years ago in a place that doesn't even exist anymore, the Kingdom of Prussia. Nevertheless, she persisted. Today, Siemens is a multinational conglomerate that does business in 191 countries and employs hundreds of thousands of people. Their expertise is wide, but focuses mainly on engineering applications. But their business has a checkered past, the likes of which can only be attained by a German-based company that operated throughout the 1940s. On top of that, they carried a corporate structure based in large part on corruption in whatever foreign markets would allow it. Today, we discuss their history from humble beginnings through 2 world wars and finally being embroiled in a scandal in the early 2000s that saw them slapped with one of the largest fines in world history at the time. So join us for a large dose of Wirtschaftsverbrechen. God, I hope we don't have too many German listeners on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
And what is that, Kashan?
It is economic crimes. If you Google what is the German word for white collar crime,
it is.
That is the result.
Say it again.
I don't think they would say the W. It'd be Wirtschaftsverbrechen.
Good job.
Wirtschaftsverbrechen.
Good job, Fräulein.
Wirtschaftsverbrechen. Oh, fuck, I had it for a second. You know what? I have it once later in the script.
You can practice again
right,
later.
So keep that in mind, and maybe
Yes.
I can hit it better next time. All right? Welcome back, everybody.
You mean Guten Tag.
Oh, yes. Guten Tag, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of White Collars, Red Hands. Well, I mean, that is, White Collar. White Collars, Red Hands. I'm Kashan.
And I'm Nina.
Yeah, and today we're talking about
Deutschland.
Siemens, which I thought, okay, maybe it's not pronounced like that. Maybe it's like the Uranus kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like
Siemens.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's not pronounced the funny way. It's just everyone's always done it that way. No, it's pronounced.
No. It's definitely.
It's 100% pronounced Siemens. Siemens originally had 2 names, like my baloney. What?
I just saw it coming, and I thought you were going to say that was the name before Siemens.
Oh, no, this is I just put those in there.
Just a little pun?
I put headers in here that are usually jokes just for myself.
Yep.
So this is Siemens in origin is coming. I'll let you decide how I spelled coming. Siemens originally had 2 names, like my baloney. Oscar Mayer, buried just down the road from here, R.I.P., and it was founded in 1847 by Werner von Siemens and a man named Johann Georg Halsk under the name...
It would be Georg.
It is not Georg.
Yes, it is.
No, it is not.
Have you never watched The Sound of Music?
No, I fall asleep halfway through. I've told you
His name is
before.
Georg.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh my God. Fine. Johann Georg Halsk under the name Siemens and Halsk. Both were engineers that started the company to manufacture electrical telegraphs, which were all the rage at the time. Their corner on the market was they were using the newly patented telegraph design by Charles Wheatstone that was a needle telegraph. Mostly telegraphs today are represented in the form of Morse telegraphs, which obviously use the Morse code series of dots and dashes to send messages. But the needle telegraph instead transmitted an electrical signal that would move a needle across a printed sheet with all of the letters and characters to point out the symbols instead. Why did that one not survive time, but the
other
Morse one did?
Hard to say.
Yeah, don't know. The telegraph is one of the first instances of electrical engineering, which meant that Siemens and Halsk was one of the first electrical engineering companies. And they did some big things immediately. As just 1 year after their founding in 1848, they built the first long-distance telegraph line in Europe, which stretched over 300 miles from Berlin to Frankfurt. After this, Werner von Siemens got all of his brothers involved on the deal, with William Siemens opening a London branch of the business and Karl Heinrich von Siemens opening one in St. Petersburg, Russia in the 1850s. The Siemens family became so involved with Siemens and Halske that in 1867, Johann Halske left the business due to a difference of business perspective with the Siemens brothers. However, he did remain friends with them and had close ties until his death. He was a very large player in the like Siemens and Halske pension fund or something. I don't know. I don't know why he left.
So their Siemens fund, pension fund, was full and strong and robust.
Yeah, they were
Filled to the brim and plentiful.
Yeah, the Siemens Bank was doing very good.
Yeah.
The year that Johann Halske left, they actually had their largest achievement to date, though, when they completed the 6,800-mile Indo-European telegraph line. The 6,800-mile Indo-European telegraph line stretching from London to Calcutta, which now is spelled differently, and I think pronounced differently, Kolkata.
Oh, interesting.
Then Siemens expanded beyond the telegraph. The same year they completed the Indo-European telegraph line, Werner von Siemens developed one of the first electrical generators without permanent magnets, known as a dynamo. And although others had independently developed this in parallel, including Wheatstone himself, the person who did the patent on the needle telegraph, Werner and his company were the first to manufacture them because they already had all the ability to do so. This allowed them to bring electrical street lighting to the UK town of Godalming, the first, I'm probably also butchering that, so sorry if you're from there, the first ever instance of electrical streetlights ever.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. From here, it was nothing but up. Siemens brought innovations to electric trolleys, light bulbs in airplanes, and throughout the late 1800s, they expanded to having offices in Japan and doing business in Australia. And they were well set up to continue the run when Werner von Siemens retired from the company in 1890, leaving control to Karl and his sons. Throughout the years, the Siemens family has remained in a large position of power at the company even to this day, although it is a public company, the Siemens family holds the largest share of stock at 6.9%, 170 years later.
Wow. That generational wealth, baby.
Yeah, it really got handed down. There's some Siemens heirs and heiresses out there. It's funny because I always thought people said that you wanted to avoid getting Siemens in your heir.
Listen, beggars can't be choosers.
Siemens in your heir.
I hear it. I hear you.
Well, I thought that was funny. That's fine.
Yeah.
Moving on. In 1897,
It's good gel, honestly.
They combined with Schuckert and Company to become Siemens Schuckert. These names have just as much creativity as you would expect from Germans.
Yeah.
And by 1907, they employed 34,000 people, which was the seventh largest company by employment rate in Germany at the time.
Wow.
Then war came to the world in one of those rare instances where the sequel is talked about more than the original, like The Godfather Part 2.
Like Shrek 2. A lot of people like Shrek 2 more than Shrek 1.
Wrong. That's so wrong. I've never heard that before. But
A lot of people like Shrek 2.
I disagree.
I like both of them.
The World Wars. Okay, we're
Yeah.
not. During World War I, Siemens, like many other businesses, shifted their manufacturing capabilities to assist the war effort and began to pump out rotary engines, airplanes, and even machine guns for the Germans. They also found themselves in our first scandal of the day.
Oh.
So in January of 1914, just months before the start of World War I, the London-based newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, published an article breaking a huge load of Siemens scandal that would forever change the face of Japan. A former employee of the Siemens Tokyo office had absconded with some incriminating documents on his way out of the door and sold them to the news. These documents detailed that Siemens had been paying large sums of money to leading members of the Japanese Navy in the form of kickbacks to receive government contracts. So Siemens was giving money to the Japanese seamen in order to get contracts. for Siemens to build infrastructure for the seamen of Japan. Siemens got the contract and threw 15% of its total value to the powers that be that arranged them to get it. This allowed Siemens to maintain a near monopoly on any contract handed out by the Japanese Navy. And at one point, they had paid £1,000 sterling, or over $150,000 adjusted for today's inflation, to obtain just one communications contract. That was until Vickers, a British-based competitor, decided to outbid Siemens' bribes by offering 25% of the total contract value as a bribe back to them. However, when Carl Richter leaked the story, the Japanese people were very upset with the corruption displayed by their government, and the country erupted into protest, which drew large participation, with some reaching greater than 50,000 protesters in attendance.
Whoa.
They were not happy about this.
They were mad about that semen.
The Japanese Navy got their budget denied. They had asked for like a ridiculous amount of money that year, and they were like, no. And then high-level officials in the Navy were court-martialed, and even the Prime Minister, Yamamoto Ganohyo, was ousted. Carl Richter was arrested when he returned to Germany, but he was charged with stealing the papers that he had sold to the media and was sentenced to 2 years after conviction. Leaders at Siemens faced some public scrutiny, but were never actually charged with anything. So is this just run-of-the-mill apathy in the face of Wirtschaftsverbrechen? Though, not necessarily. Throughout most of German history, paying bribes to foreign officials was actually not illegal for companies to do, as long as the bribes were to foreign political leaders. I don't think they could bribe people in Germany, but if you were bribing foreign political leaders, hey,
okay.
That's fine. In fact, until 1999, these bribes were even tax-deductible business expenses.
Yo, what?
Yeah, often on Siemens cost sheets, there were line items listed as Nützliche Aufwendungen, Nützliche Aufwendungen, or NAs, that literally just translates to useful expenditures, but was just always used to say bribe. So it was just business as usual. But their bribery between the Japanese scandal in 1999 was not really the controversy they're known for during this time. So after the First World War, Siemens continued to branch out, started to manufacture radios, televisions, electron microscopes, and continued to build electrical infrastructure such as hydroelectric plants in places. And then Hitler came to power in Germany, and Siemens was on the wrong side of history.
Shocking.
They made trucks that served as the public address systems for the Nazis.
Oh, God.
On their Wikipedia page, it's just like a Siemens truck with like Nazi propaganda on the side and like a speaker on top that they could drive around and act like a propaganda Nazi ice cream machine.
Great.
Ice cream truck, not ice cream machine.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah. And they were also one of the main companies that were utilizing forced labor in their factories.
Oh, wow. Yeah, really on the wrong side of history here, buds.
Yeah, from those being held in concentration camps. They owned and operated plants both at the Ravensbrück concentration camp just north of Berlin and at the quite infamous Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. And at least 80,000 forced workers walked through their doors. Their website says that they employed 80,000 forced workers during that time, and I was like,
I employed 80,000. Okay, that's like when what's that? That's like when Ben Carson was like, and some slaves wanted to be here, or some, like, you know, remember when he was like, they offered themselves to be here, and it was like, no, they didn't. Shut up.
No,
that's not how that worked.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I agree with the wording on that.
Yeah,
I don't know if you could say employed if they were like indentured servants, right? And that was between 1940 and 1945. So they had 80,000 workers that were forced workers in concentration camps during this time. They got a bit of recompense, at least a little bit, for these atrocities. When most of their manufacturing plants were destroyed by bombing in the late stages of the war, they went through a period of rebuilding, like the rest of Germany, but they continued on, largely because electronics were something that, you know, they were continuing to pop off. Electronics only got more and more needed and wanted by people all over the world, and they were one of the leaders in electrical engineering in the world. So they didn't get killed by by all of this, but it's definitely, they have a website, they have a page on their website that talks about like, hey, this happened.
Yeah.
Also,
Well, I feel like you do gotta address it.
some people don't.
Yeah, I do think it's the right thing to address it though. When you're like, hey, I fucked up, and
It's like celestial tea.
Yeah.
Google it. Siemens on that same webpage, though, does say that since the war, they have donated over $150 million to support victims of the war. But it will always be, obviously, a stain on their reputation
for sure.
that they were complicit in this. In the 1950s, they got into the computer craze, manufacturing semiconductors. They also started to produce more home electronics, such as washing machines, and they even branched out into medical devices at this time, producing pacemakers. They got in early on advanced micro devices, also known as AMD, which is one of the main producers of the computer equipment, including CPUs and GPUs. And they've even been beating Intel recently, who has kind of dominated that space for a while. I think in like 1977, Siemens bought like a 20% stake or something in AMD, and I'm sure they made a lot of money from that. They truly expanded into so many areas that it is impossible to list what they do today. But they're primarily known for making electric trains, industrial energy components, industrial automation, building the machines for industrial automation, as well as medical devices such as CT scanners. They do that as well. They kind of do a lot of very wide-ranging industrial medical devices. All of this is what allowed them to grow to that peak in the early 2000s of employing more than 400,000 people and operating in 191 countries. But when foreign bribery became illegal in Germany in 1999...
all good things have to come to an end.
I know, right? Come on. Also, 1999 is
That's so late.
is really
That's
late.
so late.
Most other people had like anti-bribery legislation by the 70s.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're at least 20 years late. And after Siemens was listed on the New York Stock Exchange in America, they moved from the German, I think the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, to the New York Stock Exchange in 2001. This meant they were going to be held to a higher standard of financial operation. And this got doubled after Enron's collapse, and the fallout of that generated the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which we talked about in our Enron episode. But you can't teach old company new tricks. All right? And they were soon smack dab in the middle of today's meat and potatoes scandal of the episode. I guess like worst in sauerkraut scandal. Whatever German equivalent of meat and potatoes is.
They like meat and potatoes. That's like their whole thing.
They got potatoes too?
Yeah, dude,
Germany?
German potato salad?
Why do you say that like I would be like, oh, you know what, you're right.
You've never had it?
I don't know. Maybe I haven't didn't notice.
God, German potato salad is so good.
I thought German food was very just bland.
It is, but
Most white people food
yeah,
is bland.
but German potato salad is very good. And they have good strudel. The Germans.
Okay, strudel does slap. That's true.
Yeah, cherry strudel. Oh, fuck me up.
It is good. So you may or may not remember that the 2004 Summer Olympics returned to their hometown of Athens, Greece.
Yeah.
What you'll definitely remember is that 2004 is after 1999.
Yeah.
Which means that Siemens would be in a lot of trouble if allegations that they bribed Greek officials to gain contracts related to the Olympics were true. Supposedly, up to 100 million euros worth of money changed hands so that Siemens telecommunications security systems were purchased leading up to the games in the late 1990s as they got ready for the 2004 Summer Games. Greek prosecution started an investigation after rumors were circling, and after 2 years in 2008, they brought charges, not against any one entity for the crime at large of not against any one entity, but for the crime at large of money laundering and bribery, which is apparently something you can do in the Greek justice system. They can just bring the charges and then say, anyone who was involved in this can now go to trial because we deemed that this happened. It was weird. I don't know. In the end, 64 individuals were accused of taking part in the scandal, including Tassos Mantelis.
That just sounds like a child of Elon Musk.
Tassos Mantelis?
Yes.
I think it's just Greek, dude. Anyway, no. Tassos Mantelis was the former Minister for Transportation and Communications for Greece, who received donations of almost 500,000 German marks put into his bank account in the late 1990s. Although he said only 200,000 were from Siemens and purely for political donations to his campaign, who else is sending you hundreds of thousands of German marks to your bank accounts?
Not math.
After they already sent you some.
Yeah.
You have another German company that's coming in, that's getting in your bank DMs and sending you hundreds of thousands of German marks? Yeah, I don't think so.
No.
All right. So Siemens also did not look any more innocent when their chief executive in the country fled to avoid arrest in 2009 either. So it doesn't look good for you. Siemens did settle with Greece in 2012, agreeing to fork over 330 million euros in relation to the bribery scandal. But Greece went ahead with a trial against the individuals 5 years later. I don't know what's going on in their justice system, but the trial did not
really
start.
Pushed back all the time.
Yeah, it didn't start until 2017. I was like,
wait, for what happened in 2004?
It was the 2004 Olympics, and then they did like.
Oh, then they did.
It took a little bit to come out, and then they did a 2-year investigation. So in 2008, they did 2008 they did the charges. 2009, the chief executive in Greece for Siemens fled, and then the trial didn't start until 2017.
Jesus.
So yeah, I don't know. Mantelis was sentenced to an 8-year suspended sentence, so I don't think he ever actually went to prison for his part. But the Siemens official who fled has not faced any repercussions in Germany. He didn't get charged with anything in Germany, and they have continued to refuse to extradite him to Greece to face trial there. But they've been trying to get him back. They're like, no, we want to try him. And
they're like, nah.
They won't extradite him.
Interesting.
Yeah. This example, though, is only part of the large operation of foreign bribery that was going on at Siemens. But it was the one that brought the company under scrutiny in many countries across the world. The governing body of Siemens was a group of 9 individuals comprising the Corporate Executive Committee, known as the ZV, which is short for 2 German words I won't subject you to, because I've already subjected you to a bunch of other very mispronounced German words. And they had known that policies regarding bribing foreign officials had changed in Germany, and that their listing on the New York Stock Exchange also made them subject to America's Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which expressly prohibits public companies in America from bribing foreign officials. They knew this. So the ZV did their due diligence, and they released multiple memos to the company that I'm sure everyone read thoroughly and also took very seriously. You know how when you get a memo in your Outlook?
Yes, I accept the terms and conditions. Yes, I read the memo.
Yeah, you get a memo in your Outlook and you're like, yeah, sure.
I don't even use Outlook.
Especially because it just reiterated that everyone working at Siemens must abide by laws and regulations. It's basically just like, hey, those laws and regulations that you're subject to,
by them.
Make sure you do that. But they never really put company-wide restrictions on or rules on relations of their businesses or their subsidiaries with other businesses and business dealings with foreign officials. They just said, abide by laws. You guys know what that means. And they were like, well, business is different in every single, we're multinational, it's different everywhere we work, but they wouldn't hand down just rules that say like, do not bribe officials. They would not do that. They just said abide with laws. And many people would say that this lack of making definitive rules for bribing foreign officials was on purpose so that they could continue bribing their way into favorable government contracts. And by some people, I mean the SEC and the Department of Justice. After the Greek bribery scandal broke, German officials started looking into the business practices of Siemens a little more carefully. And in November 2006, they conducted multiple raids on Siemens offices and the homes of their employees. After the raids happened, the ZV kind of knew they were going to be cooked and pulled an incredible move of announcing a large-scale internal investigation into the affairs of their business subsidiaries and they even hired an external third party to conduct it. Siemens then used these reports to both comply and actually provide more evidence to the SEC and Department of Justice regarding quite a few instances of large-scale bribery that was going on. Siemens was funneling money to government officials in multiple countries, including, but not limited to, Iraq, Nigeria, Argentina, Venezuela, Bangladesh, and Italy. It was such a common practice to bribe officials that multiple locations actually had a cash desk in their office where employees who needed cash for a bribe would just go down to the cash desk and they would pull out up to $1 million of off-book cash that was obscured through a variety of means on their balance sheet. So we won't go into all of these bribery scandals, but I've collected some of the hits for you, all right? Hit number 1. Siemens exploited the oil for food program that was set up to allow the Iraqi government to sell oil only to raise money for humanitarian expenses that benefit average Iraqi citizens. This policy was set up by the Clinton administration in 1995 and was set up in response to criticism that U.S. sanctions imposed on Iraq were inordinately affecting average citizens and making their lives worse just because we were having issues with the country as a whole. But the oil for food program was largely used as a vehicle for corruption until it was discontinued in 2003. The Iraqi government didn't want to sell or didn't want all of the money from their oil to go to food and medicine for their impoverished citizens.
No, why would it?
They needed to buy Lambos. So they asked for a 15% kickback on all deals done through the program. But since a lot of the deals were subsidized by the U.S., the companies doing the deals, including Siemens, just tacked on the 15% to the invoice falsely and presented that to the government, and they had Uncle Sam pay that extra 15% bribe to Iraq. Then they funneled that 15% cut through consultancy fees to Iraqi government consultants and officials who got them the contract in the first place. Overall, Siemens was allotted $80 million worth of contracts through this program and paid at least just under $1.8 million in the form of kickbacks and earned a hefty profit, somewhere around $38 million.
Wow.
If I remember correctly.
Okay, well, that's a good return on investment.
Yeah. They're only going to bribe people if they're making a lot of money from
it. Right.
They won. That's hit number 1. Hit number 2. They won a $1 billion contract with the Argentinian government to help replace their identity booklets with ID cards in 1998, and paid just under $16 million to government officials for the opportunity. And in total, just under $90 million was sent to Argentinian consulting groups for unknown reasons between 1997 and 2007. Hit number 3. Siemens was awarded multiple contracts to design and build rail transit systems in Venezuela. And between 2001 to 2007, the local branch paid at least just under $19 million to more consulting firms in Venezuela. They also were found to be using Post-it notes, so they would have to sign approvals for these payments to be made.
Yeah.
And instead of signing the actual paper and leaving a paper trail of who approved it, they would sign a Post-it note and then slap a Post-it note on there. And they'd be like, all right, it's approved. And then they'd take the Post-it note off.
Oh, my God. That's funny.
So they found them doing that on a lot of these to get them to go. And that would allow these payments to either go out sometimes directly to government officials. They were using offshore slush fund accounts in Liechtenstein and I think also Switzerland, those places that you have those offshore accounts. And they would send them directly to the government officials, or they would send them to governments usually have government consulting firms. They send it there, and then the consulting firm would just funnel it to whoever. Also, Venezuela and Argentina, very famous, very corrupt.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
So, yeah. Another hit that helped sink the ship, actually, is that the Financial Times reported in 2003 that Siemens had paid 6 million euros through off-book accounts, once again in Liechtenstein, to Milan-based Italian energy company Enel. This report is what initially sparked the German investigation and the subsequent raids. In an internal meeting, a Siemens executive made this statement. In the Enel case, the investigating Frankfurt chief prosecutor said to a counsel for the defense of the former Siemens employees that he considered the Siemens compliance program to exist only on paper.
I kind of feel like we've all worked a job where the compliance really was just on paper. Like nothing else was followed, especially at a restaurant.
Yeah, like there was a document that said not to do something.
Yeah, they told us not to smack each other's butts, but we all did it.
I asked you to stop so often.
You liked it. You liked it when I got a whole handful and just squeezed it a little bit.
Too real. Too real, because you know I'm carrying fucking cake back there.
You are. Because Sean's got a dumpy. He is dragging that wagon.
I was known for it. I had a nickname, so.
What was your nickname?
Nalga Grande. It means big ass cheeks in Spanish.
Oh, yeah, it was his nickname at the restaurant we worked at.
Hell yeah, bro. So I can throw it back. I'm like the Nicki Minaj of white guys.
Yes, you are.
You can put that on my gravestone.
I'm the Nicki Minaj of white men.
Put it on my gravestone. Overall, the investigation concluded that between 2001 to 2007, Siemens had made a bit under $1.4 billion in payments, $805.5 million of which were for corrupt payments to foreign government officials,
God.
which is more than half. It's like 57%.
Yeah.
Reinhard Sikaszek, I think that's a Polish name, so
Yeah.
I'm really sorry, who was an executive in the telecommunications team, came forward in the investigation and said that he personally managed a bribery budget of $50 million in a year, up to $50 million in a year, just for bribes. They're like, this is the allotted bribery budget, so, don't spend it all in one place.
You know what's so crazy? I do know some friends who work for some companies who have something like this in place.
We've increased our bribery budget 11% year over year, aligned with inflation. So
you've got to work with inflation. You just have to.
My God. Some executives, however, did face music in the courts for this, which is nice, including 2 that were convicted related to the Enel bribery case. But largely, the fallout was hundreds of millions of dollars in fines from multiple different governments in the wake of the investigation. The Department of Justice personally slapped them with a $450 million fine, which was far less, actually, than the proposed multi-billion-dollar fine they were originally going for. They originally mentioned fines of $5 billion.
I mean, with what they made and over time and everything, I mean, I know $450 million is a lot of money, but it really isn't like they could pay it.
Well, that's the thing. They had actually drastically reduced it because Siemens had cooperated so much with the authorities by the time the sentence was handed down in 2008 that they were kind of like, honestly, they hired a corruption executive and they said that they were going to retain the anti-corruption team for at least the next 4 years. They pretty much fired all of their upper level management. They implemented these amnesty programs where if people in the company came forward and gave them the evidence and told them what was happening, that they wouldn't face immediate expulsion from the company because they were like, it's kind of like our fault. It's like we didn't have oversight kind of thing. So they get a lot of hype in this for being like, they did kind of
all right. You guys followed the rules.
They did kind of a good job. But between all of the fines they racked up between multiple different governments, they owed $1.6 billion, which at the time was the largest fine of any company at the time. This barely slowed down Siemens, though, as they reported a net revenue of almost 76 million euros last year, net income of 9 billion euros, and still employ 327,000 people. Although they did delist their stock from the New York Stock Exchange in 2017, moving back home to Frankfurt, citing low trading volume and a want to simplify their reporting requirements. Siemens continues to be one of the largest companies in Europe, still in the top 50.
Wow.
So Siemens is a really good example of what to do when you've done something you shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. Although their motivation behind launching the internal investigation into their practices is questionable because it was already after they were under pressure, they still did it. I wish more companies would own up to their actions and face the music rather than pointing fingers and denying in the face of mountains of evidence like we've seen time and time again. Siemens has an incredibly checkered past, littered with bribery and war crimes, but at least you can say that they put a decent foot forward into the future. So I'm just putting it out there. I don't want to hear anything else about Siemens moving forward on this podcast. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Keep walking the line so I can keep your name out my goddamn mouth.
Yeah.
You hear me? I don't want Siemens in my mouth anymore. No more Siemens in my mouth.
Speak for yourself.
Okay?
Sean. Speak for yourself.
If you want to talk about it more on the podcast, that's fine.
I will talk about Siemens in my mouth any day of the week.
Anyway, that's it for this week. About as much flair in what they were doing as you would expect from a German accounting scandal.
Yeah.
That's actually not true, because when we did Wirecard, that story was actually crazy. And that was a German accounting scandal. So sometimes they know how to do it with flair. But this one, they just bribed people a lot. It was crazy to learn how okay Germany was with it for a while, though. They're like,
yeah, they did not care.
Who cares? But bribe some foreign officials. That's fine.
They're like, it's okay.
That's
not
fine.
a big deal.
As long as it gives us an advantage, yeah. So,
yeah.
So thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, right, and you're like, damn, I want to hear more German accounting scandals, please, you can go ahead and support us by leaving us a review. You can write a review with words on Apple Podcasts if you would like. Our data, our analytics show. Most of you listening right now are listening on Apple Podcasts.
Yes, you
so
are.
why don't you leave us a 5-star review and write something nice about us in there, okay? Also, analytics show. A majority of our listeners are women, which is dope for a business crime podcast. So we love you for that too.
That's cool.
56%. I was like,
I did not know that. That's cool.
Hell yeah, crush.
Hell yeah, women power.
Girl power. Nevertheless, she persisted. You like my feminist reference in the intro, everybody?
It's
all right.
So Kashan supports the 19th.
You can also leave a review on Spotify. That's the next biggest one. We're not ignoring you guys. We know you're there. We also love you. But you can leave a star review on there. Please do. And if you're on any of those other satellites, look at you being niche and hipster with your podcatcher. That's crazy. That's awesome for you. You can share, whatever you can do on those. Feel free. And if you can't do that, you probably do have access to our socials, facebook.com/whitecollarsredhands, X at whitecollarspod, Instagram at whitecollars_redhands, TikTok at whitecollarsredhands. So you can go ahead and interact with us on any of those, and that also helps us out for free. If you want to get in touch with us, go ahead and DM us on one of those. We'll respond, probably. If you're a little bit older, a little bit more old-fashioned, you can send us an email at whitecollarsredhands@gmail.com or go to our website, whitecollarsredhands.com, and go to the Contact Us page. You can do that too. And while you're there, why don't you click that button that says check out our merch, and you can go to TeePublic, buy a hat, a shirt, a bag, a mug, whatever you want. Something
Any of the above.
Something that's got our logo on it. Please do. Me and Nina acted in a short film.
We did.
That's going to come out on May 9th on Pixquid.
We sure did.
PIXQUID. You can go on there. I don't know how much it's going to cost to watch. I think you have to pay $1 or something to watch it.
$1 to see me be pregnant by Kashan.
And me look about as pregnant as I normally do. So,
Because Sean got me pregnant in this.
yeah. So it's fiction, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, feel free. Go. Might as well shout that out. Shout out.
Shout.
I said shat like 3 times
Shat.
in a row.
I'm going to shout that out.
Yeah, just shout that out whenever you can. But yeah, feel free. Go watch that. It's called Freudian Slip. Tell a friend. There we go. There's another one. The best way to spread the good word of the podcast is to hit the ground like a Mormon missionary. Go knock on doors in your neighborhood and say, excuse me, have you heard the good word that is White Collars, Red Hands? They're not the Messiah, but I'm not.
But gosh, are they
with.
entertaining.
So here, is it cool if I play you some on this Beats speaker I carried around with me? Let's listen to just the first 3 episodes, and we'll see if you like. Feel free, go do that. Spread the good word. And I think that's
it.
That's it. All right. Well, I love how we end every episode this. Like that's it. That's it. So fucking tropey. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on another episode of White Collars,
Red Hands.